Anthropic just hit $1 trillion on paper. Their actual revenue is $30 billion. The math says that they need to be a 30 bagger to justify the price tag. Meanwhile, the single mom in Kenya country needs to sell her house and doesn't care. That's today. We got 4 blocks, house machine, body anchor, and about 25 minutes of patient back in Clarity. So let's move forward. All right. So block 1 is going to be the house pulled straight off Matrix this morning. Last 7 days, residential R market, 77 new listings, 49 went pending, 61 closed, 19 coming soon. Shadow inventory. You're only going to see that if, in fact, you know where to look. 79 prices changes. This is your tell. When price changes outpace new listings 1-to-1, sellers are catching up to reality. Today, 79 to 77. Sellers are still a beat behind, closing the gap. Not closed yet. 11 expired, 10 canceled, 9 withdrawn, 17 on hold. 30 homes pulled out of the market in the last 7 days. That's a lot of fatigue. Now, the bigger picture, median prices, they're sitting between 745 and 855, depending on the source. And you're going to see up roughly 4% year over year. And that's not a hot market. That's a slow market with sticky pricing. Days on market at 86, almost 3 months for the average house to find a buyer. And that's 2.1 months of inventory. Technically still a seller's market, but the list to sales ratio is 97.4%. So the translation of that is sellers are giving up 2.5% at the table on average. On $1 million house, that's 25 grand walking out the door. And most of that is one of two things. The price was wrong on day one, or the marketing is beige, kind of like vanilla. I guess that's a good way to put that. And we've talked about this before. The data doesn't lie. The seller's broker often, they lie to themselves. So word on the street, KHTS Home and Garden Show wrapped up at Central Park this past weekend. If you live anywhere in Saugus or driving through Bouquet Canyon, you'll know though what that traffic's like. Hundreds of vendors, real local foot traffic, kind of event that still moves the needle. Raquel Wilder ran her 3rd annual paper shred and tech toss at the Congregation Beth Shalom. Free shredding for the community. That's real estate done right. It's not a billboard, it's a sidewalk service. On the crime side, we have 30 arrests across the valley this last weekend, down from 41 the weekend before. 12 of those were DUI. Of course, they are. The hit-and-run driver from Valencia, the Valencia fatality earlier this month, he turned himself in. I guess that last one matters a little bit. 23 years on the job tell me that men don't turn themselves in unless somebody close to them told them to. Somebody loved that man enough to get him to tell the truth. And that's the work. Let's get back to your house. So if you're sitting on equity in Saugus or Stevenson Ranch or Canyon Country right now, here's the move. You got 86 days on market. That's the average. Average means half the houses sell faster, half take longer. The houses selling in 30 are doing 4 things, the rest aren't. Photography that doesn't look like 2014. A price anchored to comps from the last 90 days, not the past 12 months. A pre-listing inspection, and this is important so buyers can't use the inspection as a renegotiation weapon. And a marketing plan in writing before the sign goes in the dirt. This is what 17,000 flat gets you when you're listing with a 17K agent, sellersonlyagent.com. Not a percentage, not a surprise, flat number that you can write on a napkin. To sell your house, you keep the rest. Of course, you have your escrow fee, title fees. All those things should also be negotiated if you have a well-with-it agent. One more thing on the matrix data before we move. 61 closed in 7 days. 49 went pending right now. So that tells you 49 homes are about to fund. Some of those will probably fall out at inspection. I hope not, but potentially. Some might fail at appraisal. Hope not, but maybe. The close number is 2 weeks from now. We'll probably be closer to about 40. So if you're timing a listing, the window between Memorial Day and the 4th of July, that's your sprint. So buyers are still on that spring tax refund energy. Schools are about to be out. Families want to be in the new house before the next school year. Miss that window, and you're going to be pricing into August competition with sellers who price their houses in May. Time matters. Money waits for nobody. All right, the bridge. While we're talking about money you keep, the next block is about money that doesn't exist yet and pretending that it already does. Here's block 2, the machine. Anthropic touched $1 trillion valuation on the secondary market this month. $1 trillion with a T. That's 1,000 million. Their actual annualized revenue is $30 billion. Now, $30 billion, that's real revenue. That part's not made up. But $1 trillion price tag on a $30 billion in revenue means the buyer is betting they grow revenue by 30 times before they see a penny. That's a bet. It's not a fact. Google just went Google just announced up to 40 billion into Anthropic. 10 billion now, up to 30 billion more contingent on milestones. Same week, the Bloomberg circular deal map dropped. If you haven't seen that, that's very interesting. NVIDIA invested in OpenAI. OpenAI buys NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA books revenue from OpenAI. And then investors look at the revenue and value NVIDIA higher. NVIDIA uses that valuation to invest more in OpenAI. Like a house of cards? I don't know. We're talking about intelligence, and intelligence, that's the whole game. Same coin moves around the table 4 times and gets counted 4 times. So here's the part that the financial press doesn't say. These valuations are play money. They are the score in a video game that companies are playing against each other. You and I aren't in that game. We don't get to buy Anthropic shares at, $380 billion. We don't get to sell them at $1 trillion. We're watching billionaires and pension funds run scoreboards while we figure out how to pay for groceries. So why do we care? Well, we care because the tools coming out of these scoreboards, they're real. Anthropic added 21 billion in annualized revenue in the last 4 months. That money came from somewhere, and it came from coding tools, people paying real money to ship real code faster. And that's a tool problem, not a God problem. And that's the line for today. These companies, they want to build gods in a way, lowercase g. We'll have to go with that. The founders say it out loud: superintelligence, artificial general intelligence, the successor species. That is their religion. I say we let them have it. But for us, this is a tool. It's a power tool. It's a nail gun instead of a hammer. I deploy these tools every day: real estate listings, voice agents that answer the phone for plumbers and HVAC guys, email sequences that nurture sellers for 90 days while I get other things done. That's not God work. That's leverage. So if a hammer was a tool and now a nail gun is a tool, then a thinking nail gun that builds the whole house while you go fishing is still a tool. A bigger one with a kickback. So the move for us is not to invest in their scoreboard. The move is to learn to use the tools they built so we can multiply our own revenue. So I help small business owners do that for a living: HVAC, dental, plumbing, real estate. 1-person operation suddenly looks like a 5-person operation. And that's the actual story at this point, not the trillion. The trillion, let's play money. The leverage, though, is real. One more thing while we're here. CNBC dropped a story today about top staff leaving Meta, Google, and OpenAI to launch their own AI startups. Apparently 5 isn't good enough. We got to get more up there. $18.8 billion flowed into AI startups founded since the start of last year. Why are they leaving? Because the people who actually understand the tools know that they do not need $1 trillion parent company to deploy them. This is the same insight available to you. You don't need $1 trillion to deploy these tools either. You need a clear use case, small budget, listen to some Homorzy stuff, and the willingness to ship something ugly on day one. I built a daily download with no team. Voice agents answer the phone for clients with no team. Real estate marketing runs on autopilot for sellers with no team. The AI labs built the tools. The tools will never the moat. The application of the tool is. That part's yours. So let me make this concrete. A plumber in Sylmar last month, one-man shop, was missing every 4th call because he was under a sink. We dropped a voice agent on his line. Costs about $150 a month, $147. The agent answers his phone, books the call, sends a text confirmation, then drops the lead into his calendar, adds the lead to the CRM, and he stopped missing calls. Revenue jumped about 30% in the first month. It's not science fiction. It's just $150 of tooling that paid for itself before the second week. This isn't fake. When somebody's calling you and saying they're going to use AI to make your listing hit page 1 Google organic search, okay, all right. Read all the small print because there's a lot of play there. If they're going to try to score you for keywords that have no competition, absolutely piece of cake. But if they're trying to score you for the 4 main keywords in Santa Clarita real estate, and say they're going to get you page 1 for that search term by changing your organic search, I would go all in on that. But it's not true. It's not going to happen. They won't say that. They're going to carry it out and they're going to add something like the words naked mole rats to it to be able to make sense. Anyway, that's 4 weeks. So 30 minutes now, same report, better data. AI does all the heavy lifting. The broker does the human part and the local adds the local color and then sends it. This isn't science fiction. That's $150 of tooling that paid for itself. Real estate broker in Valencia last week, 10 agents spent 4 hours every Friday writing market reports for clients. So 30 minutes now, same report, better data. AI does all the heavy lifting. The broker does the human part, puts his stuff in it, makes sure he reads it so it doesn't send out some nonsense that gets him in trouble. But that's how that actually works. 3.5 hours back per week. That's times 50 weeks. That's 175 hours a year. That's 4 work weeks. 4 work weeks of leverage from one deployment of a tool. The $1 trillion valuation has nothing to do with the 4 work weeks. The 4 work weeks are real. Here's the bridge. While they build their gods, we build our bodies. Here's number 3. So block 3 on the body. 2026 research on intermittent fasting is starting to look like something different than another diet. A randomized trial published in Nature this week showed 6 intermittent fasting is in the middle-aged adults drop body weight from 8% and body fat to 16%. LDL cholesterol down, non-HDL down, triglycerides down. But that's not the baseline. The headline is the pairing. GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, Zepbound, these drugs hit your hunger signal in the brain. Fasting hits a completely different system. AMPK, mTOR, Sartunus, the cellular cleanup crew. They're not the same lever, but combined, the early data shows you preserve lean muscle mass better. Your psychology improves, physiology improves. You spend less on the drug because you need less of it. The drug is treating the appetite. Fasting is teaching the cell. This matters because most common failure mode of GLP-1 losers is what happens when they come off. Weight comes back more often than what they left. If during the GLP-1 window, you also rebuild metabolic flexibility through fasting. When the drug stops, the body remembers how to burn fat. Most doctors won't tell you this, not because they're bad doctors, but because nobody trained them on the combination protocols. The drug came out of pharma. The fasting came out of the longevity research. Different rooms, different journals. Now, I don't know if taking these drugs combined with not eating anything at all because your appetite is completely suppressed, if you're still going to get hormonal benefits, because I don't know what these drugs do to change that profile in your body. For example, I don't eat. Today's day 2 of not eating. I go out day 5 or 6 or 7. I'm completely burning fat. I'm accessing the stored fat that I have on my frame. It's there for a reason. It's not there for looks. I know that. You probably know that. So that's what's happening. I don't do this with any GLP-1 drugs. I don't do it with help. I've practiced it enough and failed enough to know how to just knuckle down and just not eat for several days in a row. And that's a happy place for me. But if you take these drugs, question, don't know the answer. If you take these drugs and don't eat at all, because most of the people that take these drugs, they lose a lot of muscle mass. At least that's what I've heard. Is it because they're eating just enough to keep their metabolism in an action state where the said metabolism starts to lower itself to a different threshold? Because fasting doesn't happen like that. Fasting metabolism goes up. Your metabolism actually goes higher when you go into starvation mode and you completely stop eating. Would these drugs initiate that same type of starvation mode and not affect the hormones? Now, they do slow digestion. I don't know if that is an issue with not eating at all. Not that I would think that would be bad, but there would be nothing to digest. So maybe the detriment, because in the other way, when you take them and you're eating, it's holding that stuff in your digestive tract for a long time. And I've seen videos, again, not a doctor, not a nutritionist. I'm Connor. That's what I am. But I'm wondering if holding nothing and that change in your system because you're taking them and it's slowing digestion when you're not eating, if that has any kind of an impact. Also, do they have any kind of an impact on a growth hormone release if you're completely fasted? Because that's another advantage. That's why muscle mass stays in style, stays in the body, and you actually burn off the body fat. That's what the body's fat's for, to burn when you're not eating. It's just the issue is here, America, now, 2026, when is it that we go without food? We don't. And the cheap food, the drive-through food, the fast food, the things at the supermarket that are on all the center aisles. Yeah, it's very inexpensive. Well, I'm not bragging, but, a loaf of Wonder Bread and a loaf of Wonder Bread and some jelly. Yeah, not too expensive. And that's all sugar. Anyway, that's where we are. All right, let's get this. I'm going to get you into my piece now. I'm deep. I've gone into this fasting. I rebuild my body. Every time I fast, it rebuilds my relationship with food. I'm still an addict, folks. I still have complete addiction problems with everything sweet, everything sugary. I was able to put the alcohol thing to rest. Done. Many years ago. 7 years ago. Cigarettes, probably 15 years ago, I put that to rest. Chewing tobacco, maybe 20 years ago, put that to rest. And I just don't touch any of that. I'm not a moderation kind of a person. I've never been good at that. Some days, the fast goes good, 20 hours, 24, 48, 72. But sometimes that little voice gets in there and I just give in and I do things I shouldn't do. But thank God now I'm used to it. So if that happens, I can go on another hiatus from food and eat up whatever poundage I put on in the way of fat. I guess the point isn't perfection. The point is actually doing it. A felony stop isn't won by being a hero. It's won by doing the same 5 movements every single time. Fasting is the same, but staying nimble, because maybe the bad person you're dealing with, you're trying to do a felony stop on, knows the playbook and they're playing the game. And as a cop that's been out there a long time, you know yourself, if you're watching this and you're in that line of work, you know when something's off. If the issue is us not trusting that instinct, especially when we know we're being micromanaged every second of every day. But you still got to listen to that voice, because I would say almost 100 times, 100% of the time, it's right. Maybe it didn't unfold the way you thought, but it's right. All right. Here's day one. For anybody in our recovery community, and this isn't new, by the way, this is the new science finally proving out the boring fat beats that supplement aisle. For anybody in our recovery community, go to thelastaddiction.com. Protocol is simpler than the supplement industry wants you to believe. Day one, pick a window. 12 hours of eating, 12 hours of not eating. Most of these not eating hours are going to be while you're asleep. Day 7, tighten the window to 10 to 14. Now, when I say there's a 12-hour eating window and you think that you're depriving yourself, you know the issue? The issue is you're going to fill that window with food, all of it, because it's okay. It's not okay. I would say, if we're going to go into this, I would make a couple windows within the 12-hour window. I would make, this 20 minutes to eat something. And I'm not, and see, the addiction, the addicted, it's like, well, let's just pack all the food we can. So I'm going to get all the things set out. I'm going to get the crappy chips. I'm going to get the crappy dessert. I'm going to get all the Coke. I'm going to have it all right here. I got 20 minutes. All right, it's time. And you just go. You get as much in it. That's not going to do it. I can do a lot of damage in 20 minutes. If the pizza's not too hot and I'm not burning my mouth every bite, I could probably get through 2 pizzas. 2 medium deep dish pizzas with pepperoni and ham. No, ham and pineapple. No sauce. I don't know. There's something without the sauce. Anyway, don't do it to yourself. And if you've done it for a long time, you know the drill, right? It's tough. But the more that I fast, even like now, today's day 2, and I might go 7, 8, 10 days. It's easier now. But there's been a lot of practice. I think the more you practice, the better shape you get in over time. And then you start appreciating the refeeds, because that's the most important part of a fast, the time that you start eating again. And if you're fasting for, 7, 8, 10 days, that next meal that you have, it needs to be gentle. The next couple days, 2 or 3 days after that, need to be gentle. Bone broth gentle. Nothing hard. I would save, and then maybe sardines gentle. And I get a particular type of sardine. I'm not a fin and bone and cartilage type of sardine person. I'd rather not have that. But, sardines aren't a bad way to break a fast after you get through the bone broth, depending on how long you've gone. And then maybe after that, a couple eggs. I've dropped a lot of fat just on the refeed days. It's not like everything stops. Now, if the refeed days are laden with crappy food, processed food, first off, you might kill yourself. Second off, you're really going to cause yourself some pain at least. And third off, what's the point? Why? And I give it to you. Screw it up a few times. It's going to happen to you. You're going to feel so hungry that you're probably going to go out there and do something silly. And if you don't, good for you. You got a much stronger will, a much stronger disciplinary component to you than a lot of people. And maybe you're not as addicted as you think to food. All right. So day 1, pick a window. Day 7, you can tighten that window to 10 to 14 hours. But again, day 14, 8 and 16, maybe. That's it. And then you want to maybe take a day off. So pair it with a 1-day walk. Walking is so underrated. You should be walking. Walking, if you're not touching a weight or anything else, and you should, but if you're not, you got to walk. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you really need to walk. If you're anybody on this planet in earshot of my voice, you got to walk. You just have to. Walking is the thing. You got to walk. You're going to, 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. I mean, just walk. If you can get up to an hour, hour and a half over time, over a year, get bulletproof. That's how you do it. You just walk. You need to walk. All right. So 20 minutes outside if possible, sunlight in the eyes. Within 90 minutes awaken, that resets that circadian clock for free. And free is the right place for the most powerful longevity intervention we have. That's not eating. Anybody tells you that it requires a $50 a month subscription, well, they're selling something. Body wants to heal. We just have to stop interrupting it. Right. Talked about money, talked about tools, talked about the body. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the soul. All right, so here's block 4. This is the anchor. This is now a service called Just Like Me. For $1.99 a minute, and this is just shocking. You can video call an AI avatar of Jesus. I should just make one for free. And a Jesus chatbot generated by neural networks, charging by the minute. It's not a complicated thing to do. You just need the Bible as the prompt. And then you just need the voice, and then it becomes Jesus. You give it the programming, say, I want you to, I don't know how they program it, but they probably say, act like Jesus. They probably don't. They probably say you are Jesus and then act this way. There's a megachurch pastor in San Jose who built an AI version of himself. $49 a month for one-on-one personalized interactions, not with the bot, not with the man. Of course, we're going to see this more and more. The influencers, Tony Robbins types, I wouldn't be shocked if he put something like that together. He's that super fancy speaker fella. Maybe that'll be good. And people paying money to actually have a conversation with him. And I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference. There's that one. Now, Jesus, God of the universe, different level. But Tony Robbins, why not? We'll see how that goes. I think there's going to be more and more of this. I think that the human part of every equation is going to become more valuable. Not right now. You're going to have to extrapolate this out a few years. But then the human being's going to make a comeback. If we can get through these next couple of years, when everybody at the top wants to create their AI gods, we might be all right. But it's going to equate to some kind of suffrage, because everything's going to have to be recalibrated for an abundance type economy when things are very, very inexpensive. When we have AI systems taking over a lot of the white collar work, that's another thing that they're talking about, but they're not, the numbers that they're giving are probably being applied with a little bit of care and concern, because as you saw, somebody tried to throw a Molotov cocktail at Altman's house. He's the head of OpenAI, CEO, I guess that would be his title. And, that's a problem. Unfortunately, I think that people, because maybe they're misinformed or they're believing the doom end of this, which in some cases people say, we got about a 50-50 chance of this thing working out right. That's not a good place to be, but that isn't changing apparently the people that are building it. Something else to be concerned of. But as I talked about earlier, this is a very powerful tool that we can use right now to build what we need to build if you're in that mindset, and save you a lot of time if you're in the mindset. Building it for your business, does that mean we're ultimately helping it and teaching it? Yeah, probably. I guess it would be. All right. So we have that megachurch pastor in San Jose. I said that. Magisterium AI is a chatbot trained on 2,000 years of Catholic writing, built specifically because Christians were already using ChatGPT for spiritual reasons. The Episcopal Church has Episcobot, Catholic apps one day confess and confession, AI guided reflection, AI guided confession. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about that. I didn't see that part when I was preparing the show. This is happening right now across denominations. So here's the question we need to sit with. Is the AI in the room with us a tool, or is the AI in the room with us trying to be God? I think in those cases it would be a tool. Ask it questions, ask how it works things out. But don't forget, there'll be biases probably put into it, because if you're doing some kind of research on some kind of a historical event, and you're using ChatGPT, you're using ChatGPT's OpenAI, you're using Anthropic, you're using Grok, you're using one of the American-based large language models, and then you take that same question and potentially the answer, and you go over and dump it into a Chinese model like DeepSeek, and you ask it to show you differences in what it would have produced versus the other ones, you might have your eyes open in a couple ways, because the data that we're looking at is from a point of view of the United States. The stuff China's LLM is spewing out is a different point of view based on their stuff. Anyway, AI with us is a tool. We don't know. Founders in San Francisco don't hide it anymore. Sam Altman used the word God. Dennis Asabas, a god. Eli Escobar has used the word God. Their religion is the model. So when the model is omniscient, omnipresent, would it be? Might be omnipresent, I suppose, as long as you have a device with you. And nanotechnology, who knows, it might be able to whisper in your ear at some point. And offers you eternal life by uploading your consciousness. That's not engineering, that's a theology. Here's one with that. Uploading consciousness. Don't you have to die first? So is it synapse to synapse? Is it brain information that's transferred, like emptying out one tank into another? So then this vessel, the one that they extract out of, becomes dead, and the other vessel becomes alive. So you're transferring that. Or is it a copy? Are they making a duplicate of my brain and uploading that? What's the original? What is the original like? Is the original capable of still being on its own? If it is, that's the clone that's taking on that new life. They're going to have to kill me. Do you see the point? Maybe I'm missing something, because I hear people talking about being uploaded into the cloud. And I know we're way on the early end of this. But does that mean this vessel, then it does cease to exist? But what about whatever consciousness I say I have? And that's a big argument. What is conscious? But, the feelings I have. Am I going to be transported so there's no lapse in the system, and so I pick up somewhere else and completely understand everything going on? Or is it lights out, fall asleep, and then a copy wakes up, but the original's gone? Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot. All right. The source built the silicon, not the other way around. That's the anchor. For me, it's the cross. For you, it might be a different name for the same source. We're not here to fight on that, but we're here to say that machine isn't it. The machine's a tool that the same source allowed humans to build, a power tool with a kickback. Here's what I've noticed in 27 years of sitting at kitchen tables. When somebody is in real trouble, they don't pull out an app. They pull out the phone. They call somebody, a friend, a pastor, a sponsor, a cousin who's been sober for 3 years. That's the architecture of recovery. That's the architecture of grief. That's the architecture of getting through Tuesday. The architecture hasn't changed because silicon got faster or smarter. What's changed is the noise around it. And there's a chatbot whispering at you with the architecture's too slow, that the chatbot's faster. The chatbot is always available. The chatbot doesn't judge. Chatbot's not faster than a friend who actually picks up. Chatbot's faster than a friend who doesn't pick up. And that's a different problem. If your support system's broken, fix the support system. Don't subscribe to a replica of one. The market for an AI Jesus avatars exists because the real Jesus presence is missing in too many people's lives. It's not a technology problem, that's a community problem. Communities can be rebuilt, apps can't replace it. If a pastor wants to use AI to draft a sermon faster so he can spend more time with the family in hospice, well, that's the tool used right. If a man pays $1.99 a minute to talk to a Jesus avatar instead of calling a sponsor, I think that tool's used wrong. But they're going to do it. I mean, prayer cloths. There was some cat on late night TV that would pray over a cloth and sell it to you for whatever you could give. And you would have to have faith that you would send him whatever you were going to be paying your electric bill that month. Send it in. He's going to send you this prayer cloth and abundance will be yours, he would say. Yeah, I think hell has a special place for those folks. God almighty. I'm old. I love it. Let's see here. Sorry about that. The tool's not the problem. There's misplacement's the problem. We've been here before. Television was going to replace church. Television replaced some churches. Yeah, I just talked about that. The churches were already empty inside. Churches were full of community, survived. So let's play it this time. AI Jesus chatbot will replace some forms of religion. Those forms were probably already empty. The hand on the shoulder when your kid is in the hospital will not be replaced by a chatbot. That's the gap they cannot close until we get the robots and until the robots look just like us. And I'll tell you exactly when that gap shows up. It shows up at 3 a.m. when somebody you love stops breathing correctly or right. Shows up in the parking lot of a hospital when the doctor came out with a face that told you everything before he said a word. And it shows up at the graveside when the wind moves the flowers around. You realize you don't know what comes next. The chatbot doesn't show up there. The neighbor with a casserole does. The pastor with a hand on your back does. The sponsor who picks up the phone at 3 a.m. does. That's the church. The building is just where the church meets sometimes. The machine can't meet you in the parking lot. The machine can transcribe the funeral. It can write the eulogy. It can draft the thank you cards. This is the tool used right to free up humans to be human. The mistake is letting the machine try to be human. That's the part we hold the line on. They're building gods. We should be building lives and uplifting our brethren and sisters. Mission closed. 25 minutes today, cover the house, the machine, the body, the anchor. The valuations are play money. We don't live in that game. And the tools are real. They multiply the operator who learns them. The body is yours, and you should treat it as being very valuable. The soul doesn't need a subscription. And if this hit the like, subscribe, and share with a person who's overwhelmed by the noise of all of it. Mission hasn't changed. AI should be for everyone, not just the wealthy. A house sold the right way for a flat fee, not a percentage that pretends to be a service. A body that remembers how to burn fat without a needle. A faith that doesn't need an app. And that's the 4. Tomorrow morning, same time, same 4 blocks. Stay sharp out there. Thanks for watching.